and welcome to another crossover episode of Lizzie Watches Yaoi, along with Beneath Your Skin, with myself and Miss Gaia.
Hello, everyone, and hi, Zoe. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm enjoying these crossovers. And of course, this crossover is chosen because we are watching Vatican Miracle Examiners, and therefore they're examining demonic possession, which falls underneath our horror podcast of demonic possession. And also, this show is quite Sean and I, so it falls under my Yaoi flag as well. And it's just a must watch, wonderful series. So, yeah, it's the
So,
perfect filler after they took the Exorcist TV show from us.
don't remind me that
I know. Maybe
because
we'll
I'm
come back.
still heartbroken about that. But yes, this new couple uh, can feel the hole left in my cold and little tiny heart.
Aw, but so beautifully done as well, though. And it gives us some other pretties to enjoy. I'm sure you're going to tell us all about your crush from this series.
Of course.
So, episode 2 starts with you see a young man, potentially a priest or a young father, running down an endless corridor, clearly really upset about something, distraught, like he's either being chased, and then you see what is chasing him or what is upsetting him, and it seems to be a giant two-headed beast with the number 666 written on it. And obviously that's not subtle at all, because the number of the beast painted on a beast, you're pretty sure that that's something demonic going on. I mean,
Yeah. It's they weren't subtle at all, and thank God they are not calling the beast the dark spirit.
no.
So
They are literally referring it to the beast or the devil or, like, the 666 beast. Like, they know what it is and they've got it right. And it's a two-headed beast, which makes you think back to that weird baby that has four eyes and is like, oh, wait a minute, someone literally has the devil baby walking around the place potentially, because why else would there be a baby with four eyes? And now we're seeing a two-headed beast. And the two-headed beast is very much like, what are you doing? I'm going to come for you. And the young man is like, oh Lord, I'm praying to you. And it's just like, whoa, wait a minute. This young man in this school run by priests for young boys, is clearly praying to the devil and not to God to forgive him. He's praying to the beast. Oh,
yeah, that was very shocking, but also clear that he was a worshipper who did something wrong, and now the beast is pissed. And it's never a good idea to piss off such a beast.
no.
Hey, that's just my humble opinion.
Yes. Well, things certainly go from bad to worse. Like, yeah, the devil's not happy with this holy church and school. So we get our beautiful opening credits, which are gorgeous. I love the song. I love the imagery in the background. I also noticed that they use Van Gogh's The Starry Sky as one of the backgrounds, as like some of the images going past. And I'm like, oh, I love it. I love the use of it knowing the actual like European history and culture. And then we get our title, which is the endless unease of existence, which I'm not sure how completely relates to the things that are told in this story. Like the other one seemed more, but at the same time, it's just like existing can be quite uneasy, especially if you are worshipping the devil and miracles and murders are happening on a daily basis.
Yeah. And above all, if you started to worship the devil because it was a game to you, and then you realized that the devil is real and now he's playing with you. So, yeah, I think things could be uneasy
Yeah,
after that.
definitely. So we get a little recap on about like just like a minute of like going, oh, we came here because of like the virgin pregnancy of Sister Dolores. We then meet Klaus, who is murdered, and then the first episode ended with the Virgin Mary statue weeping tears, and then more going miracle, just as they were announcing that Klaus has been murdered. So we get our little recap. So we start off with they are running full investigation. They are properly examining this, like that was PHP paper and everything to test the statue and work out if it was a true miracle or if something happened. And they find out that the water is just pure water. There is no salt, there's no saline content in it. And obviously, anyone knows that tears, if you've ever been crying and you're like, it always gets in your mouth, and it's salty. Tears are salty. So she cannot be crying tears because it is fresh water that's coming down from her. So originally they know that, wait a minute, this is not a miracle, but we're going to have to prove it. And as they investigate, they come up with the most likely theory of, because of kind of testing heat signatures, they find out the base of the statue was warm and the base of the statue had been where the candles are. So the candles had warmed up the base of the statue, and therefore the most likely thing to have happened is condensation. But the one thing that makes this theory a little bit like off kilter is the fact that if the candles were regularly warming up the statue and causing condensation, it wouldn't have come as such a complete shock to see water running down a statue. And because everyone's so shocked and so like, oh my God, miracle, something seems like this is not a regular occurrence. This is the first time this has ever happened in this church. And it's also, I find quite interesting, they compare it to another like investigation they did of Virgin Mary and baby Jesus, like the appearing on a wall, and people were like, oh my God, miracle. And then it was proven that actually on the outside of the wall was an ancient kind of like, I don't know what you call them because it's not statue, but it's ornate covering that had them on it. Then the mold grew over, caused damp, and the damp went through the wall and projected the image on the other side. And I'm like, that's clever. Yeah.
It really was. And I found a little bit strange that a weeping statue of the Virgin Mary caused so much shock when we are dealing with virgin conception. So
Yeah.
it's clear that the priest still didn't say anything about Sister Dolores' condition to the students, and it makes a lot of sense because those are just kids. And so yes, it was beautifully done. It explained how actually examination for such miracles are done. And I want to point out that usually when a statue of the Virgin Mary cries, usually it's blood she cries, not tears. So that's, for example, I jump a little bit ahead, but then I will go back. We are going to talk about Saint Lucy or Santa Lucia, who is a very important saint and martyr of the Catholic Church. She was born in a city in southern Italy, in Sicily, called Syracuse. In Syracuse, in the 80s, we had a miracle of a statue of the Virgin Mary crying blood, and since it was found out that it was a real miracle, a proper one, they created a huge temple for the Virgin Mary in Syracuse, right where the statue began to cry. So everything is related basically to very important pieces of Catholic history.
Obviously being done better than we've seen. I got excited. There was another film we watched that had. Oh yeah, no, The Nun. That was like I remember when I was watching The Nun, and he said, I'm a Vatican like miracle examiner," and I'm like, oh my God, it's exciting! I love those because in my head they act the way they do in this series, and it's all like part history and theology and ancient knowledge and part science. And it's not that they don't believe in miracles; they do believe in miracles, but because their faith and their belief in miracles, they want to really make sure that these things are true and not just jump on some bandwagon or have fake like miracles affect how people see the church and religion in them. But yeah, The Nun really was not as good as this series in any way, shape or form.
Absolutely.
No. But luckily this one is good. So Roberto and Joseph go to talk to some more priests, and we get a scene of God knows what Father Santos is putting in his juicer, because it looks gross. But he's creepily juicing like red chunks of something, and I'm like, are those chunks of meat you're juicing? I was like, what is it? What would be red like that? Because it's not a carrot. It's kind of shaped like carrot sticks.
I
but
hope
red.
it was beets.
Yes, but it's not purple enough for
so.
beets.
Yeah, true. Otherwise, he just drank some smashed meat, raw
Yeah, it
meat.
does really look like he's putting like because they're like long rectangles, so it's obviously cut into chunks. And I was like, well, if it was carrot sticks, they'd be orange. So I don't know. It distracted me. So there's a whole conversation going, and I'm just like going, What are you juicing? Weird man, it's very creepy. So he's creepily juicing some things and he drinks it out of like an ornate cup. And I'm like, are you just making your own like blood smoothie there? I'm not sure I like that. And clearly Father Santos is very much like, no, it is a miracle. He is very like, it is a miracle. It's never happened before. It is a miracle. And our main priests are like, but is it? And he's like, yes, it's a miracle. And he's like, well, he's a bit stuck on this miracle train. But we get introduced to a couple of other characters, and we get introduced to a character who's no longer with us, who is Father Mikhail Brown. And Joseph like notices that there's two principal offices, and he's like, why did the school have two principal offices? And we get a bit of a history about how this school came to be, and that Father Mikhail was this wonderful man that took in orphans, like survived the World War, like wanted to open a school for these orphans in a church, found the church was completely in disarray because it had been bombed, and he restored it to its former glory, opened the orphanage that became the school, and was loved by all, including the other priests that work with him. And he was a great collector of ancient texts. And obviously, like this, Roberto's eyes are like, ancient texts, you say? Ooh, I want to go and have a look at that. That could, could give us some clues. There's these weird ancient texts that, people might be delving into. And also, I think it'd be really interesting. But yeah, Santos is like, no, no one is allowed to go into the ancient holy room of Father Mikhail. It's been untouched ever since he died. It's shrine to him. His spirit still lingers there. You will not disrespect it out of curiosity. And I'm like, I'm on Roberto's side. Roberto is like, well, being told no makes me even more want to go in there and see those ancient texts. And then like Joseph is teasing him. He's like, oh, you and your ancient texts, you love books, you love rare books. And he's like, oh my God, I want all the rare books. I would sell my soul to the devil for all the rare books. And obviously, like, Joseph is like, excuse you, Roberto. And he's like, I'm joking. I get it, we're priests, but it's just to give you an idea of how much he loves old books. And you know what? Old books are pretty lovely, and it just makes me like Roberto more that he can joke about, selling his soul for books when many of us writers are like, yeah, I'm pretty sure most of us sold our souls for books. Not a hard stretch.
No, at all. I totally agree with Roberto. I also feel there is something shady in the way the old priest stopped everyone from entering the room. And when he say his spirit is still lingering around, and I had the terrible feeling that he is not joking. He's telling that the spirit is literally still there.
Yeah.
And that makes me wonder what kind of books are in the room, and what kind of man this Father Michael was.
Yeah.
Because he sounds too good to be real.
Yeah, it's all the flags are going up because, like, you sound too good to be true. Also, the minute you have a place that has a bit of like devil worship for fun among Catholic schoolboys, and you hear ancient rare books, you're like, what ancient rare book have these boys got a hold of? And why won't you let the examiners in? Because you're knowing that they are going to take one look at that room and go, some of this stuff is not very Catholic legal. But yes.
Yeah, we know that. We know it's going to happen. We know Roberto is going to enter the study and is going to find out something not very Catholic inside it.
Yes. But after this, we cut to this beautiful greenhouse with our beautiful Mario Lotto.
Ah, my love, my love. I knew it. I knew it was Rosemary coming back to me. Because, like Rosemary was head student in the private school where Kazuto Kinouta is based, Mario is head of the dorms at the school near the Santa Rosario Church. And he saved this young boy, Sebastian, from being whipped. At least we think that was what was going to happen. And he stopped this older boy threatening him and almost forcing him to reject Jesus Christ, to worship Satan. And that's not something you expect as an initiation in a new school, because Sebastian is newly transferred into the new school, and this is how he was greeted. So only because Mario saved him, Sebastian is so happy to be in the school, because Mario saved him, and it's clear there is some hero worshipping going on there. And then there is that beautiful and delicate scene in which Mario strokes Sebastian's hair, telling him how soft his hair is. And I was like, boy, you have a crush.
Yes.
But yeah. And so I have a crush on him too. So I perfectly understand Sebastian. I also am very worried about Carlos.
Yes, something's going a bit down. So we get this beautiful greenhouse scene, and we find out that Mario he's worried for Carlos, which seems appropriate because we see a shot of Carlos hiding underneath his blankets, looking terrified and going a little bit nutty, going, I promise I won't tell. So yes, we find out that Sebastian, when he transferred in his initiation into this Catholic school, this Catholic boarding school, is to potentially get whipped in a satanic pentagram unless you renounce Jesus Christ in the Catholic school and go, I'm going to worship the devil. And say, well, that's, not normal. But still at the same time, I'm like, I don't know, there's something about Sebastian that I don't quite trust either. We get the news that Mario thinks that Sebastian could be the next. I kept calling him the Wizard Master, but he's not the Wizard Master, but it's something like that. He's going to be the next, wizard. No, it is Wizard Master. I think it just sounds better in Japanese than it does. He's going to be the next Wizard Master. And Sebastian's like, oh my goodness, so I'm going to be part of the seances. And you're like, what is going on in this good Catholic boarding school in which you're meant to be renouncing Jesus Christ? There are Wizard Masters. They're doing seances and conducting Ouija boards and doing demonic rituals as part of some kind of game, some kind of fancy escapist culture. And it's like, there's something very weird is going on about the boys, and obviously Mario must be part of it because he must be head wizard master at the moment. So I'm like, wait a minute, this is just a section of this beautiful boy that is meant to be loved by God, and his soul is so loved, who's having stigmata, and is also the wizard master of the boys' Ouija boards and seance nights out. So there's some contradiction. But we know that Carlos, who's freaking out, is being threatened. Someone is definitely banging on his door going if you tell anyone, I will kill you. So we're like, oh dear, I don't think Carlos is very long for this world. And then we get a shot of Father Francesco turning up at Dorothea's door, and she's all like, oh hey, and then you see the light kind of go out. And it's kind of implied that, maybe some sexy times are happening there. But well, shouldn't have sexy times in the school because we soon find out that more bodies are dropping. First, Francesco has died. First, Francesco has died. And then literally about 2 minutes later, you find out that Dorothea is also murdered. And our wonderful, handsome priests that are investigating everything are like, well, this is clearly a murder. And this is a murder by someone who is reenacting the deaths of all the martyrs that you saw on those beautiful stained glass windows at the beginning, and saying, okay, this person died by stoning, just like this person. This person died by having all their teeth pulled out, like this person. And this person, died, this way. And it's just so there is a direct connection. So there is now some kind of religious murderer prowling the grounds, picking off people and displaying them as if they were the martyrs from the stained glass. And this is where I'm going to turn it over to you, Gaia, because obviously I know nothing about these martyrs and what their deaths meant.
So, the one stoned to death, Father Klaus, if I'm not wrong, he was killed like Saint Stephen the martyr. Saint Stephen was a martyr of the Catholic Church, also recognized by the Orthodox Church, and he was doing his job as a priest in Israel when he pissed off people of various synagogues. So the Jewish council trialed him. During his trial, St. Stephen basically accused the Jewish council trialing him of being Satan's worshippers. And of course, he was blamed of blasphemy. And when you were blamed with such a crime, you were stoned to death. St. Stephen was stoned to death because he spoke against someone who was higher than him at the time. And we know that Father Klaus knew something that could be compromising for someone, probably the same someone who is going around killing people right now. The second martyr we see is Saint Apollonia. Saint Apollonia was born in Alexandria, and she was killed during the riots and persecution against the Christians there. It was early. It was in the early age of a Catholic Church, so Christianity was still somehow a cult. She wasn't properly killed by having her teeth brutally taken off and smashed, of course. She was killed because she was sentenced to death by burning. She was burned to death. But like many martyrs, she didn't wait for the sentence to be executed by someone else. She threw herself in the fire. And that's it's a thin line between being martyr and being a sinner, because basically many martyrs, above all women, they commit suicide, but under duress, because many of them were threatened of being raped. And we have to realize that in the early age of the Catholic Church, when a woman promised her virginity to God, it was like a contract between herself and God himself. So to break the contract would have been the worst possible thing happening to saved woman. So that's why many martyrs committed suicide, but they are saints at the same time, because what they could have endured by the hands of their enemies was so much worse than giving themselves death, that they were raised at the sainthood. So Santa Apollonia. Then we have Saint Lucia. Saint Lucia was a noble woman born in Syracuse, a city in Sicily, the southern part of Italy. Her story is very tragic because basically her father, who was of Roman descendant, died when she was 5 years old and left her and her mother without a legal guardian, because we have to remember at the time men were the only one with legal powers. The mother, when she was 12, promised her to the heir of a noble pagan family of Syracuse. But what happened? She already promised her virginity to God. So the mother had this strange disease. We can suppose it was something to her womb or something. But they traveled to Catania, that is a closer city to Syracuse, and they prayed to Saint Agatha. Was a martyr who died 50 years before Lucia was born. Saint Agatha appeared to young Lucia and told her, "Don't fear, my child, you will be worshipped in Syracuse like I'm worshipped in Catania. You will be the glory of your city." And after that, the mother stopped bleeding. So Lucia told the mother, "I don't want to marry this man. I already promised myself to God. I love God. I don't want to lay with any man." When he heard the whispers that the money and jewels Lucia and her mother owned were being given away to the poor people, he got furious because she was a woman, so everything she owned would have become property of the husband once the wedding was celebrated. So he thought he was losing money, so he went to the governor of Syracuse and accused her to be a Christian. He tried her, and he tried to make her burn a sacrifice to the emperor of Rome, who was still worshipped as a god. She refused. And in front of her denial of the emperor's godhood, she was condemned to be defiled in a brothel. Yes.
Horrible.
Yeah. Horrible. Totally. So when the soldiers went to take her to the brothel, they couldn't move her. They tried with oxes, and oxes couldn't move her. They tried to put wood around her to set her on fire, but her body wouldn't burn. At the end, one soldier killed her with a sword. Only in later traditions, we find out that probably she had her eyes removed when she was still alive because she dared to tell the governor about his fate, what was going to happen to him. And she also told him and the whole city that the emperor was ready to fall and his hair would follow. So, of course, people hated her in that moment, and they wanted to make as many damages to her body as possible. But when she was raised and taken to heaven, her eyes were restored. That's why even now, when you see a statue of Saint Lucia, she has her own eyes on a tray in her hands, but at the same time, she has eyes still restored on her face. The last one, I'm sorry, not St. Paul, St. Andrew, was crucified. It was different because he deemed himself unworthy of being killed in the same way with the same cross used for Jesus. There is a little bit of contradiction in his stories because someone claims he was crucified upside down, but no, there aren't really any sources that confirms that theory. Just his cross was a different one. It was called a crus decussata. It means that is a cross that makes an X-like figure and not the cross we are used to worship in Christianity. That's all. He wasn't nailed to the cross like Jesus. He was bound to the cross with ropes and then left there to die of asphyxiation. It wasn't a nice death.
So now I've got some more context for all these martyrs that are, what's being called like the devil worship martyr murders. A lot of death has gone on. So we have another school assembly where like Father Santos is like, oh, I'm so sorry, students. I've got some more reports, some more deaths. But before that can go on, Mario is standing there bleeding beautifully, looking gorgeous, whispering beautiful words to God, and he's got signs of the stigmata. So yet another miracle is happening as, well, we start to think, is this distraction? Is this coincidence? What is going on? But he is saying something along the lines of like thank you for being like the first chosen. You were the first of my sheep. And I'm like, who are you telling this to? Because obviously when you think of the sheep and religion and the flock, you think of the congregation for Jesus. But he's kind of like, oh, thank you, Lord. Thank you for making me the bearer of the first sheep. And it's like, there's something odd is going on here. But obviously Father Santos and all is like, oh, I love miracles. It's like, oh, it's because you're so beautiful and your soul is so beautiful that God has given you this miraculous power. And I'm like, is his soul so beautiful, or is he literally because he is the most beautiful boy you've ever seen? Because, there's something extra going on there.
Yeah, and he really is beautiful. So I don't blame the priest for calling him beautiful, but creepy, creepy vibes.
Yeah, there's some creepy vibes.
And please, 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 can we stop having him floating around and then crashing on the floor?
Oh, this
Poor boy, please,
his
please,
beautiful
please.
face when he falls each time.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh.
At least someone could catch him. I mean, please.
He's got
next
as
time.
many boys that clearly love him and clearly worship him, even without the saintdom happening around him, that could easily just like, quick, let's throw some of these pillows from our pews underneath him so he doesn't fall face on the hard ground.
Exactly.
But yes, we are faced with another set of miracles, and our lovely examiners go in with more cool, like actual investigation. I like it. So they've noticed that like there's footprints, and they've also they use this stuff called luminol, which apparently makes, I think it's a CSI technique for showing like bloodstains, and it's quite cool how it's all coming together. And they hear the story from this poor groundskeeper. The poor groundskeeper who is like, someone really should have listened to me in the first place because I've been telling you stuff for a while. But it turns out that that very first image we saw of Mario floating and bleeding was from 3 months ago, which is an exact same date, time that Dolores got pregnant. So it's like, is it a coincidence that these two miracles happened at the same time? But obviously the same time these miracles are happening is the same time that like demonic presence and this kind of lost ledger, or they call it a tally, is like come to light. And they're saying it's like good and evil are at war in this church. Like for every miracle there is a murder or a demonic ritual being like witness. So it's just like there is a fight going on.
Or even a twisting and contamination of a previous miracle itself, because we suspect Father Francesco and Dorothea were having a sexual affair, and they should be Saint Apollonia and Saint Lucia, and both of them are virgin martyrs.
Yes. So it's like, wait a minute, there's if you take now knowing the actual like martyrs, like it's like, so is this murderer killing sinners? But it's still not a holy crusade, even if you're killing sinners. But it's like there's so much intrigue going on and you're not quite sure. So our investigation puts up the fact that there was indeed luminol like on the walls, and there's the bloodstains. And there also is this thing about this cross that's written in some kind of language written on the wall. They put the luminol and it shows up, and there is indeed a cross that has been written. And Joseph is like, oh, I don't understand this writing. And Roberto's like, that is Germanic runes. And I'm like, well done. Well done for knowing the difference in runes. It's not Sumerian. It's not. It's
not Latin.
Yeah, exactly. It's not Latin. It was Germanic runes, and I'm like, wow, because we're never going to forgive that devil tongue. It's like, oh my goodness, it's written in Latin. Those are runes. Those are runes. It's like terrible film. So we know that these are in fact runes, but they are not writing anything coherently that you can understand. It's not a language, but the pattern of the runes might be some kind of secret code. And then there's two sets of footprints. There's footprints of a younger student because they're smaller, and the footprints of an adult. And they're the same footprints that are also leading away and to the statue. And you're like, aha. And Joseph, being the incredible intelligent person, he's like, I've solved the mystery. And I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm watching, like, I was going to say a queer Sherlock Holmes, but in my head, Sherlock Holmes doesn't get much more queer. So, but we get my queer detective story, and I love a queer detective story. And he's like, haha. So Father Klaus was murdered with the statue. And it's like, how do you murder someone with a statue? What's going on? It turns out you knock it over on them. They die. You move the body to position it somewhere else. And then that random scene of the water being so cold to touch suddenly makes sense. Because the water is obviously pumped out from the grounds, and it's coming out very cold, and the statue gets washed in it. But it made the temperature of the stone in the statue like go down so much. So when it was put by the candles, when the statue started heating up and the condensation was flowing, and it was like, ha, mystery and miracle solved. We don't know who the murderer is. And now there's a bit of contention as if like there's a distraction because they've turned up to go and investigate a miraculous pregnancy and this demon ledger tally thing. And now they're being inundated by demonic ritual murders, and they've also found out about this boy's Ouijian seance game because the groundskeeper is just like, and here is the truth. And they're like, oh, so we've got demonic rituals, murders, miracles, and that's not even what we came here to investigate. So yeah, something very suspect is going. And as they start putting all this evidence again, there is yet another murder. And a very recent murder because, well, the priest is not quite dead yet. He manages to get some of his last words out. So as he's being strung up and he's dying, he manages to say that the beast, and he's repeating 666, 666, and forgive me, Father Mikhail. And we're like, oh, what do you need forgiven for, Mr. Priest? We're like, oh, we definitely need to get into that secret room. And then the very last thing we see is we're finally shown Dolores sitting in her room, and you see the drip drip. And then a player that we have never seen before turns up in the room going, I've come to get you. And then the credits roll, and you're like, oh no! Oh, something so much worse is going on in this world. So much worse.
Oh, yes, absolutely. But it's so worth it.
Yes. It's like,
it's so worth it. Oh, God, this is an amazing anime. It's worth your time, and I would love to binge it, all the episodes at once, because really, it's just so beautiful. But just because I don't have any episode and Zoe is giving them to me, she's being mean, so she only gives me once at a time. And that's why I can control myself. Yes. That's the only reason why I can.
Well, it's harder for me because obviously having seen it all before, I'm like, ooh, some of it I don't remember because I watched it when it originally aired, which was a couple of years ago. I think it's 2017, this series, 2016, 2017. So some of it I'm like, what actually happened? And some of it I remember very clearly, but it's nice going into it with fresh eyes and like looking at it, and it's like, yeah, you can only have one episode at a time because you don't want things that happen later to influence your ideas of what could be happening now. But it's gorgeously animated. This anime really did not get as much love as I thought it would. Like, everyone went nuts for things like Yuri on Ice, and I'm like, yes, it's beautiful and queer sports anime, but also look at this beautiful, well-researched, historical, supernatural, but actually so far nothing actual supernatural, because they are proving and finding evidence of what's truly going on, and it's very, very queer. It's lovely. The music's lovely. Oh, and the drawings. Oh, the buildings just look so... The architecture's gorgeous.
Everything is gorgeous in this anime.
Yeah. Especially Mario.
Yes, especially Mario.
But yeah.
He's so angelic. He really reminds you of Lucifer as he was supposed to be before the fall.
Yeah.
Just saying. I'm not accusing him of anything. Just saying he looks like Lucifer, how he should have been.
Yeah.
So, just saying.
Yes. Well,
not implying anything.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to this episode?
No, I think people already know how much I love Mario. So
yeah, yes. So yeah, you're loving the Mario. I love Roberto. Love him. Yes, he's my favourite. Oh, we just have a moment there where we both wistfully think of these beautiful men that are meant. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
okay.
On that note, so it's time to say bye-byes. Obviously, if you like horror, demonic possession, priests and exorcisms, then check out our other podcast, Beneath Your Skin. We have Twitter, we have Tumblr, we have Facebook, and it's also on my YouTube channel, Let Zoe Spoil You. In fact, if you want to see anything I do, typing in Let Zoe Spoil You will help. I have Let Zoe Spoil You Twitter for my novel writing, so if you like queer, romantic, paranormal fiction, check out my writing. If you want to see the art equivalent of that, Zoe_Let for my art account. If you like anime, then check out Newbie vs. Weeaboo, where I review anime. And I think that is all my plugging for now. Over to you, Gaia.
I just say thank you for listening and see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye, guys.